Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and the opinions expressed here are the opinions of the participants only and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you every Thursday night on Facebook or on YouTube. So hello and good evening to all of you out there. And if you can't join us live, love seeing you on your favorite podcast app and catching the chat replay as well. So, let's see. You know me. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And we have a full house tonight. Let's go over to Jason Richards for his introduction. Hi.
Hi. Had no idea you were going to come to me next, except that you said you were coming to me for my introduction.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
This is Jason. Some people call me Brother Richards. I'm a past master of stuff and things and member of a couple lodges in a couple different jurisdictions.
Woo. All right. Good seeing you. Brother Joe, how are you?
Better to be seen than viewed.
That's so cool. Hey everybody, Brother Joe. I am at the airport parking lot of Washington National Airport in DC because I didn't want to miss the show. So yeah, Brother Joe, member of Stuff and Things also. I do a bit of traveling. Super jazzed to be here.
Woo. Great to see you. Awesome. Next up,
Move.
Robert Johnson. How's it going, Robert?
Oh, things are going just great. Past Master Waukegan Lodge number 78, current sitting secretary at Space Novum 1183, the premier education lodge in the state of Illinois. And happy to be here. Also the host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast every Sunday night, 9:30.
Excellent. And you've seen him before that, and now you're going to sing again. That's Brother Nicholas Laine from Canada, eh? Oh, unmute yourself, buddy.
There we go. See?
There we go. Technology.
I know, it's great. You think I know how to do this or something? Worship Brother Nicholas Laine, past master of Burlington Lodge number 165 of the Grand Lodge of Canada, the province of Ontario, and past master of Castle Island Virtual Lodge 190 out of the Grand Lodge of Manitoba, and master-elect of Endeavour Virtual Lodge 944 out of the Grand Lodge of Victoria. That's me. And a couple other stuff too.
Nice.
A bunch of other stuff, like everybody else.
When's the installation?
My installation is on July the 29th at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. AM.
Nice.
AM. Yeah, I was going to say AM or PM.
AM. 7 Australian Eastern Standard Time.
That's true. All right.
PM.
Well,
Yeah.
Good luck and congrats in advance.
Thanks, sir.
Awesome. Hey, before
We'll watch the recap.
Well, yeah. Record it for us. We appreciate it.
We will.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we get into tonight's episode, I do want to give a special shout out to all the patrons who've supported the show over the many years. You guys are awesome. You guys rock. And we love seeing you in the chat. Really good chat this week about, biblical exegesis, how to read sacred texts. So that was kind of fun. Yeah, Joe, you missed that while you were traveling. So good times to be had by all over there in the Facebook chat. You want to be part of that? Head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, and we'd love to see you there. We can nerd out on stuff and things. Awesome. Well, this week being a couple days after the 4th of July here in the United States and Canada Day recently as well, we wanted to do another patriotic spin. We've done a couple of different episodes in the past, but keeping with the holiday season, we wanted to mix things up again and talk about specifically the pledge, the toasts, all of those to the nation states that we are in when we are practicing Freemasonry. So tonight we'll talk about different customs, usages, and how do we operate within each of the nation states that we're in when we are Freemasons, because this is a universal fraternity. How to follow the rules when you travel abroad, and basically, what are the appropriate places for such patriotic rituals in Freemasonry. Okay, so we'll kick things right off, and let's talk about, at least here in the States, let's talk about the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Jason, how is a Pledge of Allegiance done in Virginia?
So in Virginia, it is not officially part of the ritual.
With air
However, it is
quotes.
prescribed. Yeah. However, it is performed immediately after the opening of a lodge, and there is a prescribed ritual for the ceremony. Essentially, there is think of a color guard or an honor guard that presents the flag at the altar. The brethren are standing. They pledge allegiance to the flag, and then the flag is posted to the east, just to the right of the worshipful master for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you for that. So yes, we are a fraternal institution in the United States, and as like most civil service organizations or civics-based organization, we have the Joe. I see you. We have these various types of introduction to the pledge in the beginning. So Joe, it's not always been that way though, as far as the way we do it in Virginia. Were you around when they actually changed the presentation of the flag?
Yeah, I was there. I was here for a couple of years before, and then when it came up at Grand Lodge, that there was a prescribed. I don't know why we're putting air quotes on it, because there is a prescribed ritual for it. So I would say it is part of ritual, right? But that's me. So
Yeah, the politics behind it was that the reason why it was allowed by certain committees was because it, did not actually inject anything into the actual Masonic ritual. It was just, an appendation. So it's not really changing the ritual.
What the
Wink,
deuce
nudge,
is an
nudge, say
appendation?
no more.
It's
what is an appendation?
non-approved fan fiction? Is that where we're going with this? Like, because it's not part of the Masonic ritual. We're not going to tamper with Masonic ritual. That would be an innovation. But we did change the way we handle the colors and do it in a little bit more formal manner than the way it was done before.
There is probably in some forgotten hole on Reddit Masonic fan fiction.
Probably TMR fan fiction. Yes.
No.
All right. How about in Illinois, Robert? Same, different?
So it's different. It's not as overtly patriotic, I would say, I think, as some other jurisdictions. It's surprising, with like the exception of maybe like New York or something. I have noticed that the patriotism kind of drops off in more of the Union states, and as you travel more south, it's stronger. Like the first time I ever went to a meeting and saw the presentation of the colors, was in some of the southern states, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting and kind of weird." And I don't mean that like it's a bad thing.
Not
I just think that
disrespectful.
it's yeah. I just think that with the separation of like government, church, state, all those kind of separations that we have, it was kind of interesting to me to see like the presentation of the colors within a tiled meeting. Like here in Illinois, we open, and then the master asks everybody to join in the pledge, and they do. There is the unwritten rule that, of course, if you're a foreign like dignitary or whatever else, you typically will stand but not pledge. So we see that from time to time here as well. But there's no presentation of the colors largely outside of anything special. So there's no there's no ritual or tiled ritual that calls for a presentation of colors or the flag, but we do see it at Grand Lodge sessions. We do see it at some corner stone laying ceremonies and rededications to buildings and such. But largely, it was a practice that I was made aware of through traveling in other jurisdictions.
Sweet. What about DC, Joe? Because I know you remember in DC as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked, because I actually went to a lodge that, well, I'll tell you what DC does. So in the few lodges that I visited in DC, it's not prescribed. It's done after the opening. So, the gavel goes down, everybody sits down, and then you do the Pledge of Allegiance. So in my DC lodge, premier esoteric lodge in the district, Benjamin B. French, woo, what we do is after the opening's complete, and then the master will ask, usually a past master or a guest or somebody that's there to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance, which is neat. Then a few months ago, I took a bunch of brothers from my lodge in Virginia to La France Lodge. That is a lodge in DC that uses different ritual. And they're considered a Scottish craft ritual lodge, and they did the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they also did a pledge to France and sang the French national anthem. So we did both, which was kind of neat. I hadn't seen that before here in the States. So yeah, a little bit different.
Now,
I wonder what they do in Arminius.
Arminius Lodge. Yeah.
Arminius
We'll have to go
Lodge
visit.
is the German affinity lodge within Washington, D.C.
Well, I would assume something
Let's
different.
go.
But let's road trip. Time to go.
Let's go.
Now, one thing I find interesting, I love the way things are worded in Virginia, where the official wording you're supposed to use as master is to say that all citizens of the United States will join me in pledging allegiance to the flag of our country, right? So it gives the non-citizens of the United States the out, right, to looking down there, right, to Brother Nicholas. Way? Yes. Yeah. It gives the option, right? So it doesn't make it uncomfortable. But we'll probably talk a little bit more about that tonight. And so let's segue over that to not a citizen of the United States, Brother Nicholas. What's tradition or what's custom in a Canadian lodge as far as
in a Canadian lodge,
right, for the pledge, the songs, or whatever?
So we don't do any of that. So
well, there you go.
Traditionally, we'll just open, and I live close to the Canada-U.S. border in Burlington here. So traditionally, we will have both the Canadian flag and the American flag consistently shown and flown in lodge. But none of the patriotic components you're talking about are done in lodge. It's saved for the festive board, with the exception of the singing of O Canada at the end of the meeting. So the meeting will close. We will, go through the closing process. And then at the end, once the volume of the sacred law is closed, the master will then say, "And brethren, you will now turn and sing O Canada," as a state that still, or a country that still recognizes the crown. We all sing O Canada to that of the Queen, who sits as our monarch and is displayed openly in the lodge room. So we will sing either to the Queen, and the Queen is generally in the same corner as the Canadian flag. So you have the Canadian flag, and then the Queen won't be that far away. So we'll sing O Canada, and then we'll leave, and then we can talk about the
Wait, is that a woman in lodge?
Yeah, an old lady in lodge. Yeah.
Yes, even better.
Ish. Yes. She's younger in this photo because I think our photo's from the 50s, so she's nice. Pretty spry in that picture.
Yeah.
Nice.
So do you get an out for people who are not citizens? I mean, because Canada is not my home and native land.
So we don't say anything. If you are there and you're an American, we will sing the American national anthem as well. So if an American is in lodge with us, we will start off with the singing of the visiting anthem, which is always interesting. because we're all expecting the puck to drop or the sound of a clacking baseball for us, because that's the only time that we generally sing. Maybe a football game, but
Curling at the Olympics is fine too.
curling at the Olympics is fine too. So yeah, so we will start off obviously with the singing of our national anthems, and if there is a dignitary or someone from the United States or a brother or visiting lodge, we'll start with the United States anthem, then go move to the Canadian one. So it's generally not a big thing, and the same goes in Manitoba as well. So both Ontario and Manitoba, both lodges I belong to, there's no significant difference there. Yeah.
So there you go. So it's
I
not
do. I must say, when I've been in
formal.
an American lodge and you ask me to do the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm like, this is interesting. What are you guys doing here?
Well,
Why
say
is this
more.
here?
Say more about that. What was that experience like? Because I want to pull that thread, right?
So,
What was going through your
I
mind?
found it difficult because as a Canadian, I don't really know what the Pledge of Allegiance is. I mean, I've heard it a couple times, but it has a very there's a mystique to it that I don't necessarily understand. That when I visited probably in the early 2000s into California lodges when I was going to Silicon Valley, I'd go there and I'd like, this is a little different. It felt a little bit odd too, because you didn't really know what to say or do.
Well, there you
So
go.
yeah.
Yeah, and that should be again, if known that you are a traveling brother, that it should be a little bit more care and attention to overemphasize, right, that all citizens of the United States, should pledge allegiance to the flag.
Yeah, I think they
Otherwise,
get surprised when there's someone in there, right? Oh, there's a Canadian here. What are we gonna do? They just kind of, and I think it's because it's so known to all of you, you'll just kind of do it, and
yeah.
I'll look there going,
What do I do with my hands? What do I do?
what am I
Yes.
doing here? What does this mean, and why are we doing this?
All right.
It's always a little interesting.
It's like the
Why-
meme of
why
the
are we
black
doing
cat on the dash, and it just says confused screaming.
Yeah, and I don't. I was always kind of the question to the back of my mind is, what has this got to do with us in lodge? Because as you said earlier, there's no connection between church and state. So even in our lodge, we're singing our national anthem or another national anthem, but that whole part there is kind of like. So I know Joe's making funny faces at me, but I kind of went, I don't get it. Why is this
Bingo.
here?
So here we go. Now for the fun part.
I knew you were like leading the witness. Okay,
Unpopular opinion
I've done
time.
my job.
And I'm reading
Yeah.
the room here. That I'll go out and say it, and I'll start the stirring of the pot, and I'll let everyone else adjust accordingly. I do not believe that with the universality of Freemasonry, that the pledge to a specific nation should be either part of the ritual or even like a tradition of the ritual or a tradition of that jurisdiction, for the following reasons, right? The least of which being that we are a universal fraternity, first and foremost. And we do have traveling brothers from other jurisdictions. Again, this isn't just a rare occurrence. This happens quite a bit, especially for border lodges, as Brother Nicholas said. Also, again, it's the morals and precepts that we're taught in Freemasonry are universal. They do not, are outside the boundaries of any laws and jurisdictions of any specific nation state or grand jurisdiction.
Does that mean the landmarks are universal?
Don't go there.
Let
him finish his
yes.
test.
No, and that's pretty much it.
Stop mixing the parts so much.
No. Yeah. Yes, I'm still stirring. All right. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Jason, then, because I had sort of a train of thought. But do you agree or disagree, and why?
I agree, for much the same reason, but my nuance is when you enter into the lodge room, that to me is the sacred space where the universality of Freemason the universality, of Freemasonry begins.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, saying a pledge to the flag downstairs at dinner or before you enter into the lodge room, I think is something that's perfectly acceptable as an homage to, the nation that gives us the freedom to meet as Freemasons. But when you cross that precipice into the lodge room, you are entering a sacred space that excludes sectarian religion, politics, and nationalities or borders. And to me, making a piece of the ritual involve a specific nationalistic or patriotic ideal to one specific country is akin to praying in Jesus' name as part of the Blue Lodge ritual. It
Overemphasizing
is,
a specific flavor.
yeah, it diminishes the sacred space of the universality of Freemasonry, if that makes sense. Yes, as to Suncard's point, it's almost like the lodge room is its own pocket universe.
Yeah.
Little bubble stuck to a bigger universe.
Joe?
And once you enter that bubble, screw you, John.
Well, I was waiting to hear about the bubble.
The bubble. Does the bubble pop?
that we're talking about. What
Yes.
the deuce? No. So I'm rather torn on this. For me, I think that should it be part of ritual? No, I don't think it has any place as a piece of ritual. However it's written and however it's presented to the members, I don't think it should be part of ritual. Now, speaking as someone who's worn the flag, I definitely, every time the Pledge of Allegiance is said, it does hold a special place in my heart. And I do think it is important. Now, we live in a very interesting country where our country was founded on, whether good, bad, or indifferent, founded on Masonic principles. Some brothers that we absolutely love, like to call this nation the Great Experiment, and it was founded by Freemasons. So I totally can dig that. But for me, where I think it becomes a problem for me is that I don't know how many brothers distinguish patriotism versus nationalism when it comes to pledging allegiance to the flag, right? And it all gets to, and we can talk about this. Should have been one of the 4-hour shows that we were going to do, because we could go
True,
on
we
about this
could.
for a long time. But I think that
Let's see,
a lot, especially,
patriotism, nationalism, nativism.
Next, you're going to be blowing up the
yeah,
Georgia Guidestones, and just
oh
cats and
man,
dogs are going to live
well,
together. Yeah.
Oh my God.
eugenics, baby, eugenics, but no, but I think that, again, I think
This
the
derailed
purpose of it,
quickly.
it did. So shush. Um,
Squirrel.
I think the purpose of the pledge, I know he's squirreling, is important. And like I said, it definitely holds, I hold it in high regard. Um, and I feel privileged to do so. Should it be part of our written ritual books for jurisdictions that have them? No. I think that should come from an organic place. But again, I think geographically, I think we have some issues where it comes to, you can go to 5 different lodges all across the country, and the tenor and tone of the people that recite the Pledge of Allegiance can take on very different meanings, right? And I think that's a problem, because I don't know if the people who are reciting the Pledge of Allegiance actually understand the words that it contains when they're saying it in a lodge room.
True. And Brother Nicholas, since you led us
I'm
down
more
that
confused
path,
now than I was.
how about it?
Yeah. How about that? And those road apples. So I'm gonna say to you. So first thing, Joe, I respect the fact that you've worn the flag, and it means a lot to you. But as a visiting person who sits there and listens to the words, I get confused why it's there. I go back to and you talked about nationalism and patriotism. I think that in a sacred space, we want to be proud of our nation, um, and, and and be careful and respect our patriotism. I think as a Canadian, we do that a little bit more. Um, carefully,
Okay,
for lack
you
of a
know,
better word. I don't know, right?
since you lob
So
that
it's
tennis
just
ball
different. Like
gently over the
we've
net,
our countries are founded on similar precepts, founded by, when you think about it. I'm doing a paper on the history of Masonry and the history of Canada, and you look at all of our founding prime minister was a Freemason. You know, our first prime minister. If you look at when we do the confederation, when we become a confederated country as a Dominion of Canada, once we do the BNA Act, the British North America Act, out of the 32 people, 16 are Masons, right? So we have a lot of similarities, except there's that little thing that you just talked about between nationalism and patriotism, and I think that's really one of the nuances as a difference of a Canadian to an American. I think we're all very much nationalists, and we want to respect our
I
nation
would,
and
I
nation
would,
where we come together. Right?
well,
Let's be clear. Let's just for definition's sake, right? The term of nationalism, as kind of we're going to define it here, is basically identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially
Yes.
to the exclusion or detriment of the interest of another nation. So it's like
right,
saying
that's where I was
America
gonna.
first, right? And that's
Right.
there's something to be proud of your country is patriotism, but going so far as to say not only America first, but America only, right, or something like that, that gets into the nationalism part where there is definitely the line there when, especially for a universal fraternity. Joe, and then we'll go to Robert.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah,
can I just
absolutely.
finish
So
off there, and then I'll go back to
Oh,
Joe?
please, yeah.
Yeah. So Joe, before you go, so my point of view is more, we're proud to be Canadians, right? As an entity, and as you just gave the definition, I don't think any of us would say, Canada first, or we're better than anyone else, right? That's what makes us who we are, and would be my only caveat to that when I say I believe we're all in that side of the house. So hopefully that helps. Over to you, Joe.
Oh, why? Thank you. So
You're
yeah,
welcome.
and I'm glad John brought that up, where because we were throwing around the terms patriotism and nationalism kind of interchangeably, and for a very long time they were. But then you get to the 20th century, and the term nationalism really started to take a different meaning when we get to places like early 1930s Germany and things
Right.
like that. So
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
nationalism became love of country in spite of all its faults and warts, and those
Yeah.
things don't exist. So to respond to your comment, I don't think the purpose of the pledge has that, America first or nationalistic bent. And I think that it's a personal thing, right? It's for those that have. It's okay to have a healthy respect and love of country. That's not a bad thing. And
Yeah.
I think that the ideals of America hope that you do, right? But once it starts to get into my country is the best no matter what they do, and you're dragging people out of their homes and stuff like that, and then it starts to take on a little bit of a different flavor. So I don't equate the two, and I don't see where the purpose of it is to be interchangeable anymore. You know what I mean? Especially within the halls of a Masonic lodge. So to your point, I kind of agree with you. And yeah, I'm done.
Woo. Good save. All right, over to you, Robert.
Survived that one.
I'm like Joe. I think I wanted to serve. When I was 18, I really wanted to get involved in the U.S. military and serve my country. My my dad and like we had a lineage. Everybody joined the Navy, and that's where they went. And I was unable to do that because I had asthma, and at the time they had so many recruits because 9/11 had happened, that they were able to just turn us away, the littlest thing. And I'm like, hey, I was allergic to cats. And they said, sorry, no exceptions right now, try again later. And So I've always had this idea that service to country in a way that was very close knit with civic and civic duty. So like when I read things like, I don't care about anybody out there wants to criticize my politics or whatever, but like when I read things about like the Second Amendment, and we talk about things like a well-regulated militia, right? Like those kinds of ideals that were put forth by founding fathers have embedded within them a civic duty to ensure the prosperity and sovereignty of the United States as the homeland, And as this progresses down the road of nationalism, and honestly, it's not even nationalist anymore. I mean, we're full blown into what Rod Serling used to put on the TV every week as jingoism. We've got basically people that are aggressively preparing for war, or just aggressively moving towards things that aggressive foreign policies and just being overtly loud and too patriotic to the extent that it makes people rather uncomfortable. And we start to see that creep into the fraternity a little bit. I think in a broad spectrum across the United States, I would venture to say fraternalism, regardless of the fraternity, always has kind of a slight bent toward the Republican / right conservative side of things. And in that, there, in my opinion only, is that I find sometimes that the sway into nationalism due to again, my opinion, I am not trying to insult anybody, but an uneducated opinion about nationalism and what patriotism is leads into some dangerous areas. And so, and certainly the same is true for left-leaning politics as well. It just, anytime you've got this overwhelming majority of tribalism that happens and moving into kind of this moral superiority complex that we tend to have sometimes, not all the time, we run this danger. And I think like things like the pledge, I really don't think the pledge should have anything to do with ritual. It shouldn't be codified at all. In fact, if I feel like a Grand Lodge should probably just not address it. It should just be a thing that's not mentioned at all. And if your lodge does it, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that, as John, as you mentioned, we share some similar political ideologies, I think, and one of those is kind of this idea of sovereignty and open and inclusiveness to let people be people, make their own decisions and choices,
Right.
and within that, I think sometimes Masonry kind of scoops up and we kind of get a little nationalistic at times. But why? Right? Like,
But why?
the big membership booms and everything. I mean, you might want to go into that, but I mean, this whole thing with the massive influx of members who came from the armed services, who fought for our country and were patriots and did their civic duty. These guys came in and I'm sure if we traced a lineage of when this started to happen,
that would be great to track by Grand Lodge when they started introducing any sort of pledge protocol. That would be really cool to trace that and then see where it goes across the different jurisdictions. Was it all part of the Baltimore Convention? I don't know. You have to go do the research and find out.
Well, it couldn't have been. I mean, just without dipping my toe in your next 2 weeks of research. I mean, the Pledge of Allegiance didn't come about until the 1890s.
Correct.
Right, and it didn't even mention the flag or our country until the 1920s. Right, and then it wasn't until about 30, 40 years later when they added "under God" to it at all. So.
This guy pledges.
Bellamy basically did it as a marketing ploy to make cash, if we want to get honest about it.
And let's not talk about how the original salute was either. So
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want to do
Yes.
that.
no, don't. No, we're not going to do that. You can
We'll skip
Google
that
that one for yourself. But Jason brought up a good point that I want to come back to here.
It
And this is
looks like
something.
this.
Look at that. You're giving away all the
Oh my
secrets,
God.
Jason. So Jason brought up a good point for once, and I want to come back to it, which is the fact that he said that in Lodge, we're supposed to be brothers. We're supposed to unite, and the way we do this traditionally has been to prohibit the talk of religion and politics. And
Correct.
he added a third one in there, and I've seen it codified, written down once, and I've never been able to find it again. Please, someone email the show and let me know where this is, because I did see one expose or something that said that included you're prohibited to talk about religion, politics, and borders as the third thing. And I want to see where that came to, because it still doesn't really resonate today. It's not written down in Virginia, at least. But this is important because, when you start having any sort of pride to your state, your county, your homeland, you start to now favor that over the others. And that is another way to literally divide on a map our allegiances. And that is just another thing that separates brothers. And so I actually have a map here. Here's a map of, let's see, favorite sports team by county, or this is at least a NFL sports team. And so you can see the spread of the United States here. And so I'm even going to extrapolate this and say that even talking about your favorite sports team by default is talking about borders, which is by default a divisive vice. Right? So we shouldn't even be talking about, how the Ravens are 10 times better than the Steelers, because that is dividing brothers. That's not promoting peace and harmony. That's not promoting unity. And by extension, it is talk about borders. So it's just fascinating to think about adding, or at least institutionalizing borders as that third taboo topic that we don't talk about in Lodge, because once you start putting a border around yourself, that means that some people are going to be inside the border and some people are going to be outside the border. And, if you are a Freemason, we talk not only about the universality of Freemasonry across the globe, but even outside the globe. That's why there's a flag on the moon, right? So
what do you think about, you started to talk about this Freemasonry and borders thing, but where I have seen that actually come back in, right, is if we say, and it's kind of like when our parents say, well, I don't care what Tommy's parents do. You could be like, well, here's John going up to this Grand Master. RJ says in Illinois they can email the minutes, and the Grand Master, whoever that is, I don't care what they do over in Illinois. Down here, we read the minutes before and after. So there's kind of like this interjurisdictional play too that comes also back to sovereignty and respecting, the sovereign jurisdiction of each Grand Lodge. And generally speaking, like anytime we've had any kind of conversation about what one Grand Lodge is doing versus another, you've seen it online. Everybody's like, you shouldn't be, casting stones into another jurisdiction or what have you. But we see that in, in Lodge also.
So I guess that brings up the good question is, given that, at least here in the States, a lot of jurisdictional lines are drawn by each Grand Lodge because they happen to fall within the state's boundaries, right? So then are they permitted to kind of be, I wouldn't say nationalistic, what's the stateism? Like, is it being able to promote one state because it falls in alignment with the grand jurisdiction?
Well, I think to answer that easily, a lot of states do that. I've been to lodges in states where the state pride is almost equal to or greater than the sense of national patriotism. You know what I mean?
I mean, do you sing Maryland, my Maryland when you're in a Maryland lodge? Right? Is that encouraged. I mean, no, it's not
Well,
currently.
everything's bigger in
could
that
be.
one.
Yes. In that one state.
Yeah.
So Nicholas,
Like what happens if you divide Alaska in half? You get Texas
back
as
to
the
Canada?
third largest state in the country.
Sure.
you get Canada back. I like that even better.
Thought we got Alaska from Russia.
Yeah, I know you did.
Details.
Remember that.
So, Brother Nicholas, how would you feel if the tradition, the custom of singing "O Canada" and all of that were kind of pushed away, or at least kind of downplayed officially going forward? It's tough, right? It's a tough.
Yeah, I would say it wouldn't
conversation.
be the same. It wouldn't be the same. I'd say that as a proud Canadian, yeah, we want to sing "O Canada" at the opening. The only time that I see us parading in the flag is in the Order of the Eastern Star, which has its roots differently bonded in the 30s. So we see that here, and so in Canada, that's the only time you actually see the flag being paraded is within OES. We then sing "O Canada" there, and similar we would sing national anthem there. But yeah, I'd say it's an important component of our our opening ritual where we sing "O Canada" and the brethren there. I mean, when you think about it, we always look, at least as a Canadian, I look at the difference, right? We always say that Canada is a culture mosaic. In the United States, we learned in high school, at least when I was there, it's a long time ago now, so I'm old, is a melting pot. So as a mosaic, I think we want to be proud that we're Canadian. So it doesn't matter where you come from. We want to, help and understand who we are, right?
You got applause from
So
Joe.
no,
right?
I wouldn't want it to disappear.
You did.
Right?
He did. That was one of the few times he'll get applause from me. But yeah, I love you, Brother Nicholas. No, he hit it on the head, and that's kind of where I was gonna finish up today. Was for me, everybody here on this call knows that I'm not overtly nationalistic. I absolutely am patriotic, but I think for me, when I think of the Pledge of Allegiance in the context of Masonry, context of American Masonry, I think Brother Nicholas kind of on the head there, right? Like I always grew up knowing that America was a melting pot, right? And you had people, my grandparents came to Island, and the other side of my came by other means, which I will not. But they came to the country, and we became a true melting pot, right? Like we interject their original countries ideas and beliefs and foods and everything and culture into ours, and we truly become a melting pot. And that's how I grew up. So when I think of the Pledge of Allegiance in that context, I think of a leveling out, right? So whether my background is my grandparents came from Spain, or they came from Chile, or what have you, or wherever they came from, whatever your ancestry DNA test says, when you come to this country, there is a level set where we love those ideas in people, and we love those things being brought into our nation. But at the end of the day, we should all be American, right? Because we have the choice as an American to bring in those new ideas and those new cultures and live in that melting pot and not be, just one thing and one thing only. So I think it's a commonality that we all have, whether you are or not. But to Brother Nicholas's point, never would I make him in my lodge, say the Pledge of Allegiance, knowing that he's not an American. So I think those are two separate conversations. But for me, that's how it always resonates with me. Is like I have this really diverse background, and my family has a super diverse background. But at the end of the day, we're American as well, so we should honor that. And it goes back to the very beginning where I said, we're founded on Masonic principles. This nation owes Masonic principles to its formation. So I dig it.
All right.
I also want to just throw something out there. As I've traveled around, it is truly such a gift to travel around the United States, to sit in different lodges that are composed of different types of people and different socioeconomic strata and all of these crazy things, for all the perspectives that we gain. And I have to say that if you don't travel, like, that's the thing, you're supposed to travel as a Mason. And one of the things that not that I find personally frustrating, but that I find somewhat disappointing, only because I'm sad at the experiences that the brothers will never have, for when somebody doesn't visit another lodge outside of, let's say, the state, or even their jurisdiction, or their district or area or whatever, because then you start getting this real kind of insulated view of Freemasonry, and it starts to breed and add on to ours is best. This is what we know. And when I visited, let's say, a DC lodge, when I went to Benjamin B. French, or if I, even going out to Virginia, knowing that, this is by the nation's capital, I'm telling everybody out there, you will not have probably a more eclectic mix of individuals, outside of maybe California and probably the Virginia DC area. So much culture and difference and richness. It's no wonder that some of the practices over there in Virginia, like if you're a citizen of the United States, has made it into the verbiage. That ability to travel kind of opens your mind more to the differences between patriotism. Hey, I love being here in America, it's amazing. And nationalism. We're the best. We're moving into our own, religiosity, and also everything is for us first, and every other country can fend for themselves, or have our table scraps. That kind of ideology, which honestly is, not even compatible with Masonic ideology. So, yeah, if you travel, that opens things up, and I think it kind of dissipates some of that nationalist flair you might experience, in your hometown lodge. I mean, that's what I experienced anyway.
So we're at that time for the final question of the night. And the final question is, if you were Grand Master for the day, or year, or decade, whatever it may be, regarding any forms of allegiance to the nation of which you are in, would you keep it the same, change it, get rid of it, or something else? So no wrong answers here, just your own personal opinion. And we'll start with our brother to the north, Brother Nicholas.
I'm going to answer it differently. So I'm going to ask a different question as you get to the end, and I'll do it quickly. So when we go to our social hour, we start off with a toast to the Queen and the craft. We then go to the toast to Grand Lodge, and then obviously we go through the rest of the toasts. So your question to me is, would I change anything? And I think the answer is no. Again, if you're an American visiting us, we will give a toast to the office of the president. So we don't do one specifically, and I don't know how you would do it for us. So I think it's important, as a Canadian and as a person who holds a dual passport. I'm also a British citizen as well. I think it's important that we understand where we come from and where we go to. So I would say yes. Let's keep it, and let's understand where they have a place in the lodge. Let's not mix lodge, so it dilutes that sacred place as a Grand Master. And I would say let's make sure we have the right ability for us to thrive both in lodge and in our festive board. So I kind of like what we do here in Ontario. I think it's well balanced. Hopefully I answered your question there, John.
Keep it the same. That's what I heard. Don't change a thing.
Well, keep it the same for reasons, because I think it's well balanced, right?
Yeah.
We don't care
And the
about your reasons.
There's no reason that's
It's
acceptable.
tradition.
It's tradition.
It's tradition.
Oh, Canada.
But to
And I'm not
reiterate your
sorry
point,
for it.
not sorry at all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think the
Sorry.
what I like about what you said was that you want to keep it because of the implied, if not explicit, respect to other nations when you're there, right? So
Yes.
because you do that, then there's really no problem of disharmony. But
Right.
it's not explicitly written down anywhere. So it's good because you are aware of it. But if not, then that's a different issue altogether. So thank you for
So
sharing that.
yeah. And I would say that if you go down when I was in Australia visiting Lodge, the Canadian methodology and the Australian methodology are very much the same.
Well,
That would
there you
You
then
go.
both
cause
have
a
a
question
queen.
of
That's
saying
why.
what.
That is true.
Because you have a queen.
Yeah.
All right.
Somewhat. Okay, moving right along. I've talked
Here.
enough.
All
New
right,
guy.
Brother Joe. What say you? Would you keep it the same,
Well,
get rid of it, change it, or something else?
so being blessed to be a member of so many different jurisdictions, I like the way that DC does it, right? So do I think the Pledge of Allegiance needs to be codified in our ritual? Absolutely not. Because like we said at the beginning of the show, Masonry is universal, right? And we claim the vast dimensions of Freemasonry to be from all the way to from the center of the earth all the way to heaven and everywhere in between. And you can't put a national flag and stick a bow in it and call that Masonry. But in the end, I would say if I was Grand Master for a day, there'd be so many other things for me to worry about. But yeah, I would not codify a Pledge of Allegiance as ritual. Would I still do it in Lodge? Absolutely. And I think there's many different ways to skin that cat. It doesn't need to be part of the opening or the closing where we have as Brother Nicholas was talking about, where we're opening our sacred space and then we're closing down our sacred space where we're supposed to be all of one mind. So should we do it at some point? Absolutely. I enjoy it. And but yeah, so I think I would take the best parts and most equitable parts of that from all the different places I travel to, and make it less codified, I guess.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Brother Joe. Over to Jason. What say you? Keep it, get rid of it, change it, or something else?
I will take the John Ruark approach.
Don't steal my answer, man. Don't steal it.
I would make it non-compulsory.
Ooh,
I
diplomatic.
think the lodge, the lodge isn't the building, the lodge is the members who are chartered to work. And those different lodges should be empowered to observe the niceties and ceremonies that best meet the needs of the members chartered to work. And so if you have an international lodge that has 95% of its membership as expats, who are not citizens, then perhaps perhaps there is a more appropriate way to show your gratitude to the host nation. So I think by relegating the decision authority down to the local lodge level, I think is appropriate in this case. I'm not being super neutral. I'm being super libertarian.
Good approach.
Was
Good
that your
approach.
answer, John?
Well, moving on to Robert. What say you? Would you do the for,
Good
the
answer, yeah.
against, or change it, or somewhere in between?
I think I would just remove all of the references to it from all of the standard work. And I would then create an edict once, and that would say addressing why the pledge has been removed. It has not been removed for any particular reason other than to be more, I guess, objective and more, I don't know how to even put it, like to be, it's just more appropriate to move the pledge and to say, lodges are free to do the pledge before the opening of lodge. And if this is so, you must use the approved language, which is, members who are citizens of the United States, please join me. Please be upstanding and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States, not our country, right? But the flag of the United States. And that allows us to continue to be patriotic, and it even actually opens the books up for more lodges to do more things if they wanted to. For instance, if they wanted to integrate something along the lines of, presenting the colors, if that had not been something they did before. Now it opens it up for additional ceremonials that are outside of the bounds of the ritual, which means the Grand Lodge has no jurisdiction on what you do. So I think that's what I would do. I wouldn't outlaw it. I would just say, take it outside of the lift and shift. Just bring it outside the gavel if you want to do it.
Excellent. There you go. I think I would agree with you on most of that. So yeah, the answer, Jason, you're looking for is a combination of yours and Robert's, where I would explicitly remove it as part of like the formal way of doing it per the Grand Lodge. However, to say if you're going to do it, here's some best practices, right, to make sure that harmony is preserved. But one thing that we didn't touch on in this episode is that we as Freemasons are encouraged, at least here in the States, to be good and peaceful citizens. So regardless of where you stand on the pledge or not standing for the pledge, we didn't even talk about kneeling for the pledge, as was a lot of controversy a couple of years ago. I'm not going to touch that right now, but to understand that we as Freemasons are taught to be good and peaceful citizens of the nation state that we're in. And so, RJ nailed it, but it should be, we should separate what is ritual from what is lodge culture. If a lodge wants to sing, the Maryland, my Maryland, for being in that state, that's great, because that's something that is unique to that lodge. Let them have that choice to do that. But you see this already. You see this already in other affinity lodges that have lodges with their own characteristics, their own flavor, their own customs, traditions, and so on and so forth. And guess what? We do that already, right? If you've had a tradition where, the way you present a 50-year pin to someone, or the way that you give a past master award, and it's the same way, and it's always this running joke, or this running tradition of the lodge. These traditions make that lodge culture. It makes the lodge unique, and that's not ritual. That's not written down and prescribed by any grand jurisdiction. And so, that should be treated in the full effort to keep harmony amongst all the brethren traveling. And so, yes, let's keep religion out, let's keep politics out, and I would say let's keep borders out as well. So that's my 2 cents. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.